All right. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another week of the Educated Home Buyer Live with Josh and myself here to talk about Trump, the executive order, update you on the economy, mortgage rates while we answer your mortgage and real estate related questions. So, Josh, a little bit early tonight. I got to leave a little bit early tonight. So we started the show, the live, about 15 minutes early, and it looks like we're starting off on a good note. We got quite a few people in here watching at the moment. So, Josh,
Jeb,
should we ask if we should start earlier going forward?
let's ask them, see what they think. You guys want us to start early, 4:30 Pacific, 4 p.m. Pacific, noon? We'll do a lunchtime call.
Let's not get crazy.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, what is the best time to start a live for you guys? And make sure you say Pacific Standard or Eastern or whatever so that we can, subtract, add what we need to being on here on the West Coast.
That's complex math. You don't
We
know
do
that.
math.
I'll give you 1,
We do
2,
math.
or 3 hours you need to add or subtract.
For all of you out there in different areas of the United States, let me know where you're watching from. Where I'm from in North Carolina, it's snowing. Where I live now, it's 75 degrees outside. And it's nice.
We have some listeners in Houston that we just opened escrow earlier in the week. They had a little back and forth, got their property under contract. And Houston is also dealing with Kinston type weather, and they have been having snow days at home from work so that they don't have to go out.
It's snowing on the beach in North Carolina. I mean, Louisiana, it was snowing on the beach. I mean, this is crazy stuff. So anyway, enough of that stuff. So let's take a little bit of time here, go through some charts as we always do. But in order to make the show a little bit more effective, flow smoothly, if you will, start putting your questions in the chat now. That way we can just answer them as we come back out of charts and just dive right into it. And we'll kind of be looking as we're going through charts, going through the charts in case there's any specific questions about charts, we can answer them as we're going through. So with that, Josh, let's take a look. We always like to look at inventory. This week, inventory actually increased. So we're starting to see it tick up just a little bit, where we've seen it more or less decline nationwide since the start of the year, which isn't out of the norm by any means, but we're now sitting at 632,000 single family homes. That's up 1.25% from last week and 25% from a year ago. So normally inventory doesn't start actually rising for the season until sometime in mid-February. So we kind of just got to watch and see what's going on here. And we'll talk about it more as we talk about here local markets. But this is essentially just showing us where we were last week at 624,000 homes. We're now at 632. Last year, the peak was at 739. A lot of the estimates out there is that we're going to hit somewhere in the 900,000-ish inventory level at some point in 2025. But you can see, for context, back in 2015, same time, same week, all of that stuff, we were sitting at 933,000 homes. So we're still below that. Why 2015 is the number they use, I don't know. But that's the number, and so that's what we're using. Orange County. So what we've seen with Orange County is inventory just, spike, as you can see there on the chart. Currently sitting at 2,792 homes. That's up just under 3% week over week, so 2.76%. But Huntington Beach, we actually fell down. We're down 4.32%. We're down at 185 now. So it's not this straight line up with inventory increasing. Probably going to be a little bouncing around, Josh, which, to be completely honest, is normal for this time of year.
I thought you were being hyperbolic when you said spiked, and then I looked at the chart and I go, that is actually a spike.
Yeah, we don't have a spike like that on the chart, and this chart goes all the way back to 2022. So you start looking, we have nothing on the chart that looks like that in really either of those charts. So it's something that we need to pay attention to for sure. New listings, 46,000 new listings this week, plus another 7,000 that were immediate sales. 3.6% more unsold listings than a year ago. We're feeling it out there in the market. Things are slower, less buyer demand, higher rates. All of those things are definitely having an impact on the market. And we're going to see that as we kind of flow through some more charts here. Home sales, 10% below, 10% below where we were last year. What does it say? 375,000 is where the newly pending home sales are coming in. That's 0.5% above last year. So we're just above where we were last year. I mean, more or less the same. This time of year, you don't expect prices to push higher with the spring inventory. And essentially that's more or less what we're seeing at the moment. So This is this the same chart, Josh? That's home sales. This is home prices. So I gave this one away is what I did, but nevertheless, we'll just keep moving on
You
here.
lost their attention. They checked out. You gave away the info.
Total home contracts pending, 45,000 new contracts for single family homes, 10% fewer than the same week ago. I think I just had the same chart a minute ago. Somehow the charts are all mixed up in here, Josh, but nevertheless, we're just going to move through these. Price reductions sitting at 33.5%, which, as you can tell, pretty much in line with where we've been last year, kind of in between 2022 and 2023. This chart I found interesting, Josh. This is a chart we were trying to find a couple of weeks ago.
We looked for a long time. Two guys
and,
looking for an hour, couldn't find it.
And what's really interesting about this chart, guys, what I want you to focus on is this is a monthly shift in home prices. So the blue are obviously positive increases in home prices, whereas, the pinkish color, is, I guess we're going to refer to that pinkish as we move into red, is going to be declines in the market. What I like to look at here, Josh, is what we've been focusing on, the spring housing market. When do you see the most appreciation in any given year? Really between March and July. That's when the most home sales typically happen. That's when the most appreciation happens. So if you're somebody that typically says, hey, I'm going to wait and see what happens, I'm going to buy in October. Well, the big part of that appreciation for that year's probably happened if it's following any sort of historical norm based on what we're looking at here. So not to say that you shouldn't, that you should buy or you shouldn't buy, whatever. It's just, these are things to pay attention to because, it can have an impact, especially on the price that you pay.
Two things, Jeb. This is one of my favorite charts because I used to have to compile this from different sources. So appreciate Lance doing this. I don't appreciate that blue, which generally indicates cool, shows the hot parts of the chart, and red that generally indicates hot shows the cool parts of the chart. We're going to have to have words with him on that. But like you said, this doesn't mean buy now, don't buy now. What I like to tell people is, even if you look, years that were soft years, so 2007 to 2010, we have those middle months were better. So if your plan is to buy this year, this doesn't tell you, hey, I have to buy here or there. It says, if you are trying to follow the crowds and buy in the convenient time of the year, late spring, early summer, so the kids are in school by next year, that's going to have the most competition and it's going to have the greatest amount of appreciation. Doesn't mean it's bad or it's wrong. Lots of parts of the country, these slower months where you have less competition, there's also less inventory and you're looking at homes buried in snow or you're fighting bad weather. So it's all things to just weigh and to know and to arm yourself with the facts. It may not change your behavior at all, but it's good information to know.
Absolutely. And some of the other charts we're going to look at here. So this is Zillow's forecast from basically last December until next December, what they're forecasting. And, the blue, again, is showing appreciation. You need to talk to them as well. Whereas the red is basically showing cooler markets. And then I'm going to summarize this whole thing. I'm not going to stay long on this chart. You can, go back and watch it if you want. And then this shows the areas that are most likely to see declines during this period of time. So the first chart was areas that are mostly likely to see the most appreciation. This is the areas that are most likely to see home prices go down. And then this is kind of a summary of everything, breaking it down. Now, this particular chart doesn't tell you exactly which markets they're referring to, but it just, on top, it is showing you Zillow, thinking home prices are going to increase, and Moody's thinks home prices are going to increase. All of those cities are on the top right quadrant. Top left quadrant is Zillow thinks they're going to go up, Moody's thinks they're going to come down, and then at the bottom, kind of vice versa. So just interesting when you look above that middle area, the middle axis of that chart, you kind of see that the majority of these cities, they're expecting some sort of appreciation in 2025.
Go through your next slide, Jeb, and then I want to back up and kind of, It's not my original thought. Lance had a really good point to make on the two early charts.
Yeah, and then this basically just summarizes the last chart. So 193 markets where metros, where Zillow and Moody's are both basically forecasting some sort of price increase, whereas 156 where Zillow is forecasting a price increase and Moody's is forecasting some sort of price decline. And then you have 22 markets where Zillow's forecasting price decrease and Moody's is forecasting a price increase. So kind of opposite there. And then 9 where they're forecasting both. So, go back and look at that chart and you can see which markets they're referring to. But, in order to keep the show moving, I thought it was a good chart.
Well, here's what Lance pointed out. Here's Moody's saying here the West Coast is going to have a really bad year, which doesn't really jive with what anyone else thinks. And here's Zillow looking at the Gulf Coast going, hey, they're going to have nice appreciation. Austin up 1.1, Punta Gorda up 2.6. So his take on this was, for the most part, they kind of agree. Moody's, for whatever reason, is excessively negative on the West Coast, and Zillow seems to be excessively positive on the southeastern market. And the Midwest and the Northeast look solid in both of their data sets.
Yeah. So there you go. And then, so, one of the things that happened on Monday, post inauguration, was a lot of executive orders, Josh. And we talked about it today in our episode that's going to drop in about a week or so, where we talk about the executive orders, how they're likely to impact the housing market. But there was one specifically that stood out that had to do with housing, and it's basically an executive order to, what was the actual title, Josh? To something about price.
Yeah, it was long and crazy.
Yeah, I forget the name of it. It's actually the title of our episode here for price. What is it? I can't even see the title of our episode. But anyhow, this is essentially the verbiage of that executive order. And so, basically what he's saying is going out and give a price relief. That's what he's doing. It's delivering emergency price relief. And so all it is verbiage telling people that, basically we need to reduce the cost to build housing, is what it is, more or less what it comes down to. And so we talk in the episode how that's likely going to impact the market, but what we have highlighted here is lower the cost of housing and expand housing supply. So that's a great one-liner. It's great executive order. The reality is a lot of follow-through needs to happen in order to actually make this turn into something.
When you read through all this text, Jeb, what it reads like is a mission statement. It's like, this is our objective. This is sort of our marching orders. It doesn't do anything in and of itself, but it does clarify what this administration would like to accomplish and sort of the marching orders for the rest and the other departments of the government.
Yeah, and basically it ends saying the policy shall report to me every 30 days thereafter. So in theory, there's a conversation every 30 days or so to tell how this is actually progressing. Is it progressing? Is it not? Which is, at the moment to be determined. So it's, there's a lot of things that Trump wants. There's a lot of things that Trump has promised. There's a lot of things that the population wants. The reality is not all of it's going to happen, and whatever does happen is likely to take longer than a lot of us want to actually flow through. So one of the things, Josh, that happened back in 2017 that is likely to happen again are the SALT taxes. So, we talked about this. Well, we did talk about it. Sent you an article a little bit ago. Just
state and local
revisiting.
taxes for any of you. So if you're in a state with income taxes, the state income taxes are deductible against your income before you pay your federal taxes. So the federal government doesn't really like this, because if you're in California and you have a 14, 15, 16% state income tax, then that comes off of your total income before you calculate your federal bill. So when they did the changes in 2017, they capped it at 10%. So California, for example, Jeb and I are most intimately familiar with this. Let's say you make $300,000 a year and you go, oh, it's a rich person. Oh, well, a lot of parts of Orange and LA County, you better make $300,000 if you want to buy a median priced home. So say you do, husband and wife, each of you make $140,000, $150,000. That combined household income is getting in that 12, 13, 14% state level. So take away your deduction, say you end up at $200,000. That's $28,000. So we have $18,000 of deduction that you previously had that disappears as part of that. And in that situation, let's say you buy a $1.4 million home, you get $20,000 a year of property taxes, also not deductible under what we currently have. So you've got New York, New Jersey, California, areas where we have congressmen and senators that their constituents are like, hey, this is BS, this sucks. So this article is basically saying, not only do we have, so we talked about, Jeb, this red wave, and Trump's going to have the Senate and the House can do whatever he wants. Very narrow margins in the Senate. So these few senators from those states that have high property taxes and high income taxes, they can hold the tax cuts hostage over this. So Trump is pretty much not giving them a blank check, but going through and saying, I'm with you. I'll go along with this. And you go, okay, I don't like this. You and I, Jeb, are both on the wrong side of this. Every year we're losing deductions that we otherwise would have. But that article says they don't know where the number is going to be, but it's currently 10,000. They said 20,000 isn't enough. The numbers that were mentioned there were either 100,000 or $200,000 of state and local tax deductions. I'm like, are you kidding me? They were saying like they were going to put an income limit so that billionaires aren't benefiting from this. Like if you play for the Lakers and you make $5 million, do you need to have $100,000 of tax relief? I don't know. I'm not saying where the number is. It's always easy to say that people that make more than me don't deserve the benefits, and people that make the same or less, we all do deserve it. But bigger picture on this, and we're going to look at a couple things with this, Jeb, is here's the hard part. One of the reasons why interest rates are so high, besides inflation, besides a fairly strong economy, is that we have this deficit spending, and deficits over the long haul are slightly inflationary towards yields. So when we look at this, we're saying, hey, Trump wants to extend his tax cuts. He's going to have to give this away as part of this. You have more deficit spending. We're going to have a $3 trillion deficit this year. And everything we're talking about only adds to that. And there's not $3 trillion for Doge to go in and figure out. I threw this one in here, Jeb. It just shows that we've been range bound on oil going back to like 2023. Oil prices dipped during the pandemic. They shot up during the Ukraine invasion. But since then, we've been here between what, 65 and 80 bucks. One of the other executive orders that Trump had is we're going to drill. We're going to open up drilling. We're going to be the biggest producer of oil in the world by a large margin. So one of the major investment houses put out their projections and speculation going forward, and they're saying in 2027, they expect oil to be about 57 bucks. So a breakout of this range to the low side. We've talked about it a million times. Oil filters through to everywhere in the economy, transportation costs, building plastics, manufacturing, any number of things. So if that's the case, that's going to take some of that pressure off of inflation. So again, another executive action moving in the right direction. Big thing, or reason why we have not seen a spike in interest rates with the inauguration, with some of these coming in, he's done nothing with tariffs yet, other than to say for Canada, nothing with China, nothing specific said about China, but Canada and Mexico, we're not doing anything till February 1. We're forming a committee, and there's going to be multiple voices in the room. They're going to tell us how we're going to approach what Trump would like to do. Much more reserved and cautious than what people were worried about. So far, so good. This is from David Rosenberg. I thought this was really good. Are tariffs inflationary? Says the answer is no. There was no lasting impact on inflation in Trump 1.0. It is a price level shock. It will only have a feed through effect in the economy if the economy is already overheating, which we were there in 2022. We are not there now. So he reminds that we do all the time on the show, inflation is a process, a rate of change. It's not the current price level. But he said, moreover, tariffs affect three parties: the foreign exporter, the domestic importer, and the final consumer. They all share the burden. The extent to which it reaches the consumer, which would be inflationary for the economy, depends critically on where we are in the business cycle and the various price demand elasticities for the products involved. So very complex. And it's been passed off as something very simple, that it's inflationary. Tariffs cause inflation, going to be a problem. This one, Jeb, we get my favorite report of the quarter of every quarter right at the beginning of each quarter. Lacey Hunt, Hoising Management, goes through, and what he focused on in the letter this quarter is capacity utilization. This is the chart for the US, but he showed every major economy around the world is worse than the US. So look at capacity utilization as how much are we using the factories to build stuff. So if you're at 100% capacity utilization, you're in trouble because you can't make any more. So we have a limited amount of goods, and all of the dollars are chasing those amount of goods. When you have more capacity, lower capacity utilization, when you have more capacity to build, then there's no pricing pressure there because there's always room to build more. You have more capacity than you have demand. This is a leading recession indicator, tells you that things should slow down moving forward. So whether we get to a recession or not, it tells you things should slow down. Inflation should moderate. This is absolutely disinflationary. In terms of what this does for us in interest rates, Jeb, when we came on last week, we had got a hot jobs report followed by good PCE, and we got a good CPI number last week that surprised to the positive. But really, we are now in a clearly defined up channel. We hit the high end of it, and we're working our way back down. We need to get below, what do you figure, Jeb, 458, 457, somewhere around there. We need a solid break below that to truly break this trend in this channel. And you tell me your thoughts on it, Jeb. I don't believe we're going to get it in the early stages here of the Trump presidency because the markets are still uneasy. Volatility, uncertainty, until we get 60, 90 days down the line and the market gets a better handle on what he wants to do, it would take some really weak employment figures or some really low inflation numbers, which we get PCE next week. So it could happen. Wanted to point this out, Jeb. This kind of goes and flies under the radar. The worst levels in 2023, the spread between mortgages and the 10-year treasury was all the way up over 3%, 3.11. As of the most recent week, it's ticked up a little bit. We're at 2.3. That is a 0.81% difference. So treasury yields didn't get better. Inflation didn't get that much better, but we've seen a big compression, a big improvement in mortgage rates relative to treasury yields. So it was worth noting. What does that mean in terms of interest rates? Super flat week over week. Mortgage News Daily still reporting just a hair over 7%. Most of the clients that we locked this week were a hair under 7% with 0 points. FHA also about a quarter high, just a little under 6.5. Most people should be in that 6.25 range from that perspective.
All right, guys, we talked about this last week. We'll mention it one more time. Next Tuesday, it's not happening on YouTube. This is happening off YouTube. There will be a separate link for it, but it's the Educated Homebuyer's Blueprint. It is our guide to helping you buy right, borrow smart, and build wealth. It's essentially a first-time homebuyer seminar to guide you through the process from A to Z. We're thinking it's going to take somewhere between 60 to 75 minutes to go through all the information. It is really there just to educate and guide you, provide value. A lot of you guys are here looking to answer questions, looking about the process. This is really, this is where I would start if I were doing the process. jebsmith.net/seminar, or actually webinar, either one, /webinar or seminar will get you there. So jebsmith.net/webinar will get you there, and register, come, enjoy yourself. It'll be an hour. 15-ish, and it'll be good information to really nail down what you're looking to do in 2025. And it doesn't really matter if you're 3 months out, 6 months, a year out. The information is valid. It's not going to change. It is really about the basics of what you should be thinking of and what you need to do in that process.
Yeah, we're gonna walk through the true A to Z blueprint of what you need to know and put in place so that you are an educated home buyer and you go out and you successfully navigate what is an otherwise difficult market. We've got some really good content. Jeb and I have gone back from the beginning of the show, content that he had of things that he worked on before that, content that I had, and 155 episodes of the podcast, and pulled all of the best of that together into this presentation. For anyone that shows up, there's going to be some exclusive discounts there to help you. Again, market's tough. These prices are high and affordability is low. Some things that will keep your costs down, enable you to get into a home with an expert team to get you the right loan at the right price, and just make sure you can take some of the stress off of it. So again, you don't have to be ready to buy next month to do this. I would think if you are at all interested in buying in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, I would absolutely check it out. It's gonna be a little over an hour and just packed with valuable information.
There you go. Good stuff. That's where we'll leave it tonight, Josh. So let's head out of here. So let's start going through some comments, some questions. If you have questions, make sure you're putting them in the chat. We started by asking whether or not you guys like the early start to the show. Normally, we wouldn't be, we would have already started. But did you like the early start? Would you like us to continue that? If so, let us know in the comments, what time would be ideal so that we can nail that down for you. But we got some people watching in Los Angeles. Minnesota is normal. We need rates to drop. Here's a question, Josh, that we've kind of addressed, but let's talk about it a little bit more. Walter's asking, what are you expecting now that Trump is in office? Is 2025 going to be the same as last year, up and down, ? And so hard to say, right? We're 3 days into this presidency, and a long time to go if we're looking at the year. So my guess is, I kind of said this in our forecast. I think 2024 looks a lot like 2025 in the sense that you got volatility. I think there's going to be good news that's going to bring interest rates down. And then I think occasionally you'll get the spikes in some of these numbers that make the economy look stronger than than people think, and you're going to get rates kind of bouncing around. And I think ultimately those rates bouncing up and down are going to add pressures to home sales. They're going to add pressures to buyer demand. All of these things are going to largely depend on what happens to mortgage rates. And if I was a betting man, I think there's volatility in the mortgage rate environment, at least for a good half of the year. I don't see a straight trend in either direction. Josh, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say similarly. I was thinking 3 to 6 months before any of the volatility settles out, just because the markets are uncertain of what Trump really intends to do, how much he'll be able to do, and what the actual impacts are. And then you have the overall economy as a whole, which any president doesn't have that much control over. It's going to be doing what it wants to do with some pushing up, down, sideways with presidential policies. So from that perspective, I think we had at least 90 days before the market gets comfortable with it. We could see really good inflation figures. We could see slowing unemployment, and still the market just go, hey, we're not sure how this is going to shake out. I think the improvement, if it comes, and the lesser volatility, a more stable market will be the second half of the year.
All right, good stuff. We got a lot of comments, not a lot of questions. Just kind of going through them here, guys, trying to find the
Well,
gold.
let's just stay on the topic here because it's very similar. Nicholas Hernandez says, when do you guys think his tax policies will take effect? So they expire after 10 years. The way they were done, they're effective for 10 years, and they went into place in 2017. So do they expire in 26, or do they go through 26, Jeb?
I think they go through 26.
I think so as well. So we have 24 months in which they're either going to expire, which no one is going to let happen, or we're going to negotiate something new. Like everything in Washington, Republicans and Democrats both love to give shit away. So we're going to figure out how we're going to expand those tax cuts, extend and expand, versus working on how we're going to get deficits under control.
All right, good stuff. A comment from some child saying, "I'm so Sigma." Can somebody explain?
Your kids talk to you like that?
Yeah, let's see. Somebody explain what that means. No, I'm kidding. Too funny. So thanks, Nash. Appreciate you, bud. Let's see. Drew asked a question. Thank you for offering this. What is the format of the webinar? It's going to be a lot like this, actually, but there will be a presentation side. So it kind of like how we went through the beginning of the episode with charts and that sort of thing. There'll be some high level stuff on the screen, which will essentially be bullet points, conversation points for Josh and I to touch on, and kind of drill through that format. It is, again, a teaching class more so than it is a Q&A class, right? We're essentially have compiled you guys' questions over the course of 3 years of doing this, in addition to the knowledge and stuff that I've taken from my first time home buyer course, and that I charge for, by the way, and kind of narrowed it down into what is the high level, what is the bird's eye view of this whole thing that people truly need to know if they're considering buying a home. And really that's what it comes down to. And so we're trying to provide and pack as much value in an hour as possible. So again, it is bird's eye, but there's a lot of detail in there as well that will provide value. That's at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
And in terms of if you're literally talking about the format, it's not going to be streamed on YouTube like this, but it's through the same software. So it's going to look very, very similar to what you're seeing here.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So, all right. So Caden says, following up from last week's question, is it cheaper to buy down points on a 15-year fix compared to a 30-year? Any additional benefits? But did we answer this? Any additional benefit besides faster?
We did. We went through that exact same question. I don't think it was Caden, but it was the exact same question. And I think I said I was going to do some research, Jeb, and I didn't get it researched.
That's why they're asking.
So we can't get mad at them. I failed in my task for this. We needed the AI to look at the transcript and give me tasks of everything that I agreed to do. So while you're going through something else, I can jump in here and get a look at it.
Yeah. So Lexi's saying, basically, is the housing rate in California going to go down? I assume you're talking about prices, is what I take from that question. I don't think you'll see prices decline in California, in Southern California, at least in 2025 for the better part. I mean, for the foreseeable future, really. Again, it's a supply and demand thing. You have to understand that, there's a lack of available homes out there. Just think of how many homes were just lost in LA, how many people are displaced, whether it's renting something, buying something. There's already people moving from LA to Newport here in Orange County and buying property, renting property. A lot of the leases are going above and beyond what people were trying to get them for, because insurance companies are helping pay some of these fees. So there's an imbalance. The wildfires, that sort of thing, only adds to it. But take the wildfires out of the equation, it's just there's not a lot of buildable land here in Southern California. Different parts of California will be different, right? If you're in the Central Valley, in some of these areas, you might see a slower market, because some of these areas, a lot of the people buying in some of these markets are going to be more impacted by higher costs and higher fees than somebody buying a $2-3 million home, on the coast in Orange County, right? It's a different buyer coming in with different funds, that sort of thing. And so at the moment, what you have is a lot of first-time home buyers are a percentage of our market, but you have a lot of move-up buyers. And guess what move-up buyers have? They have funds from their existing homes to be able to put down to help with the cushion of higher rates, right? So they might be going up in rate, but it's not like a first-time home buyer coming in with 3-5% down. Some of these people can say, hey, I'll just put a little bit more money down. It'll bring my payment down, maybe not as low as I want, but it'll have a bigger impact. Or maybe they're in a position to buy down the rate or do different things in order to help with that. So it's just a different market. But I think for the most part, you're going to see a market a lot like 2024 when it comes to home prices, if I were guessing. And I am guessing, clearly.
It's an educated guess. It's an
Yes.
educated guess. But yeah, similarly, we looked at the chart at the beginning of the show here. Moody's is showing like Santa Clara down, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm not seeing that. I talked to people in that market, especially if you're under 1.5, like they're like, I'm not worried about selling my house. It'll sell in 5 minutes. I'm worried about the buying the next one and getting something under contract without having cash in hand and without getting in a bidding war. So it just doesn't mesh with what we're seeing. Now, maybe if you're in the Bay Area and some of the, tech money that isn't flowing quite as freely, $3, $4, $5 million homes could be a different story. But, for Jeb and I, unfortunately, we don't fly in those circles.
No, we do not. You were trying to find some information there, Josh. Were you able to
Yeah,
find it?
no, I just ran it. So I just ran a basic scenario, 20% down, a 30-year fixed, and basically your rule of thumb is 1 point will get you down 0.25%, and it's almost exactly that as of today. So I want to buy down, the 1 point will get me down 0.25%, and on the 15-year, I'm looking over here, and 1 point is going to get me down 0.5%. So from that perspective, the shorter time frame and the borrower, the bank getting their money back faster, they are willing to give you a lower interest rate for buying it down.
Got it. There you go. So good stuff. Whoa. How are you using AI in real estate? So I think more of a task-oriented AI than anything else, taking information from the shows, the lives, transcripts, helping them condense it. Like, we took transcripts from episodes and asked commonly asked questions. What are the most commonly asked questions? That sort of thing. That's how we're using it, more so than really anything else. I mean, I think it's really just helping with daily tasks, things that we do a lot, making it simpler to gather information and condense it and break it down. And at the same time, it's good for us to be able to compile information, take, a lot of the things that we read continuously, put it all in one place and ask for high level of what that looks like, and be able to bring that stuff into you guys in a way that, it's condensed versus this, just 10 different sources, just a couple of points to make versus, just all of these different slides that are talking about various things. more so than anything else.
Just yeah, and in a lot of ways, a lot of it is in preparing for the content. When there's 23 articles that we need to go through, it's kind of hard to highlight all that stuff up versus putting it in something like Notebook LM and saying, hey, here's what we're looking at, here's what we're talking about, give me the best pull quotes, that type of stuff. It's not that we don't read the stuff, but it just saves you the time of having to highlight. Remember, where was that quote? There's so many things. We both get a lot of listener emails, so some of them are complex, and it's not that I'm not going to check the AI's work, but we both have very highly trained custom GPTs and a Claude, depending on what the task is, that have mortgage guidelines, that have all sorts of information. And it is a big leg up to kind of get a first draft of a response. Some people will write an email this long, and I want to get back and get them an answer, but the AI can start really well with a good answer with that. And then we just
well, I mean, I've done over 1,000 videos, and on the podcast, we've done 155 episodes as of today. We recorded the 150. That's a lot of Josh and I talking, and we've been able to take all that information, those trends, and put them in there. And basically, these things know how we think. They know how we talk. It's weird. It's really weird, but it can be very, very helpful in many situations. So, and it's only going to improve. So at some point, Josh and I might not even be here on Wednesday. It might be
JoshBot and Josh GPT and JebBot.
Yeah, JebBot is my bot. So it's JebBot and Josh GPT.
So I have a question for you. What would you pay more for? Access to Josh GPT or JebBot? Which would you put more value on?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
the challenge. Challenge.
One's real estate. One, they might not be able to understand what comes out of it. That's the problem.
Which one?
Yours.
The one with the North Carolina accent?
No, the one that just takes it high level. You gotta break it down so people can understand it. Filtered says, do you think Trump policy on ending remote work will impact the housing market at all? So, one of the things that he wants to do is bring government workers back to the office. I don't know that he has control over any other workers other than the government workers. Could that have an impact? Sure, it could, depending on where these people are located. If you're, teleconferencing in from Southern California to DC, and now he wants you in DC, that's a problem.
Well, Jeb, I actually got in someone's newsletter, I forget what it was, but they're in Virginia, and they said they've seen this extensively, that people left DC and they were going to the suburbs around the DMV, and those prices went up. And the prices actually suffered that's what it was. Lance Lambert did an interview with a guy who's a loan officer and actually the VP of a mortgage company out of the Virginia area. And he was saying exactly what you just said, that a lot of these government workers, they don't have to be there anymore. Like, I can go get a cheaper house in a suburb with some land versus a very expensive condo. He says they're already sort of seeing the reverse of that, a little downward pressure on prices in the suburbs, and people coming back to the city in some of those areas doing a little better.
All right, there you go. Maddie said we're both wrong and that they expire. Well, she said the 2027 tax cuts. She meant the 2017 tax cuts expire at the end of 2025 after 8 years.
She went all caps on us in the 8 too. You are corrected, sir. 8 years.
Yeah, there you go. So we're going to correct you, Maddie, and say 2017 instead of 2027.
In all caps. Put it now. I guess numbers are always.
But if you could very well be correct on that. I thought it was 2026, but yeah. That would, there you go. Maddie brings, that's the nice thing about viewers that are informed.
We're going to answer Marcus' question. We're going to get back to it, but you're missing the big one here.
What am I missing here?
Kathleen
contributed $20 super sticker and said that Josh Lewis, that's the only reason you wanted it. So I had to read her comment.
I just put her $20 up there. You're the one that shared her brilliant insights.
He should be president.
Once they started doing the background checks, dude, I would not last long in Washington.
I went to push my button that said Jeb is always right with you saying it, and it didn't come on.
It's not working. I erased it when you weren't looking.
Dang it, it's not working. I'm gonna have to mess with it here in a second. But anyway, thank you, Kathleen. That's very kind. Appreciate the super chat there. So Marcus says, are you seeing houses fall out of escrow because of higher insurance costs, and do you think that will cause house prices to fall in the future because of the fires? So,
but in addition to the answer, Jeb, give us, I never got the closing the loop on your story yesterday with the insurance moratorium issue.
So long story. Well, let's answer the question and then we'll kind of fill in the blanks here. am I seeing home prices fall out of escrow? I'm not personally. I haven't seen anything fall out of escrow. Josh is probably a better gauge of that because he deals with more people, in general, because I only deal with the people that I specifically work with, whereas Josh, is dealing with multiple buyers buying different houses, all that good stuff. So, Josh, are you seeing any fallout?
No, what I will say is, and I'm not saying that people that don't do this are not smart, but like the more cautious and smarter buyers are getting that quote ahead of time. Those buyers we were talking about earlier here in Houston, they came to me and they said, "Hey, we got the quote for the homes we're looking at, plus or minus $1,800. So use $1,800 a year, $150 a month for our homeowners insurance when you're looking at that." So if you're in the market, very, very wise for you to get those numbers ahead of time so that you know what it looks like. We had a buyer I need to check in with here at the first of the year was looking down in San Diego, and some of the areas they looked in where they wanted to be remote, and it was in the remote areas the fire insurance was really, really high, and they said doesn't make sense to have a $3,500 a year insurance bill on a property that if I'm in the city has a $1,200 insurance bill. So it's impacting consumer behavior. I don't see it causing deals fall out, and I don't see people going, "Oh, throwing up my hands, I'm not buying." It's just something to be cognizant of.
And the second part of the question, do you think it will cause home prices to fall in the future because of the fires? Not because of the fires per se. I mean, it can definitely have an impact. I'm not going to say it can't. There's a lot of areas that, because what's going to happen is these insurance companies are going to get more picky on where they insure. Cost is going to go up in some of these areas. Is it going? It's hard to say. Could it slow home price growth? Potentially in some of these areas that are really, really close to high fire, high risk areas. I think it could. Am I, planning on that happening? Not necessarily. I mean, there are definitely places I wouldn't consider buying a house because of fire risk. And I think that's more of what people need to consider is like, I think demand is more of the issue than it is insurance costs being the issue. It's all one and the same to some degree, but it's just less buyers wanting to have to deal with that, don't want the risk, don't want to be that close to a fire. On top of that, insurance cost is just this overwhelming thing versus, hey, if insurance companies around these areas just dropped the prices, substantially in these high risk areas, people might say, well, I don't really want to be in a fire area, but the insurance cost is really, really low. Well, maybe I'll take the risk. It's like double whammy, high risk, high cost. Hell no, I'm not doing that. And so I think that's the bigger play here.
So another really, really good. Well, wait,
Hold
go
on.
back on the insurance. Tell us your story.
So yesterday, I had basically a deal that's in escrow that we were told that the buyers couldn't get insurance on the property because there was essentially a moratorium going. So after doing some due diligence, Josh asking his insurance person, me talking to escrow and a couple other people, what we realized is there's no moratorium for the state, but some of the insurance companies out there have moratoriums. So, which basically means that they're not issuing insurance at the moment because of everything that's happening in Southern California. Long story short, I reached out to the agent representing the buyer here, and he said, "Listen, this is a little bit different. This is vacant property insurance. They're getting it from Lords of London because of what they're doing." And long story short, they ended up getting the insurance policy yesterday, so it's all moving forward. Loan docs and all of that are out now, but could it have been accurate? 100. I mean, I don't know what Lords of London does like insurance. I mean, what they do differently and all of that. So don't truly know if it was a moratorium or something else going on, but nevertheless, it's resolved. So we move on.
We
move on. All right.
Anon has a very good question. And they take the Anon very seriously. They got a mask on their profile. We can only see eyes. Hi, I might be in the market soon under my VA loan benefits. Will it be possible to work with you, Mr. Jeb, within LA County?
Depends on where in LA County. That's really the you tell me the Valley, I can't help you. I wouldn't be a great fit for you. It's too far. I've been going up to South LA recently, helping one of the buyers from here on YouTube to help find the right property. So in some of these markets, it's definitely a possibility. So yeah, just reach out and we can have a conversation about where you want to be. I think that's the more important piece of the puzzle is figuring that out. And if I'm not the right fit, I'll refer you to the right fit. But Josh, So Josh and I are going to the Clippers game tomorrow night. And one thing, if you're not aware about the Clippers' new arena, the Intuit Dome, is that
spectacular facility.
their technology is like next level, right? And so part of their technology is when you get their app on the phone, they ask
which you have to have.
They ask you a series of questions. I mean, it is like they're asking for everything in your life, right? They want access to everything. But one of them is, would you like to take a picture of yourself to basically use as, this identification piece inside the Intuit Dome? Sure. Josh says you have to do it. So Josh goes on to tell me that I don't need to take my phone out the entire time I'm there. Like when I show up, they know I'm Jeb. They know I have a ticket because it's in the app. And essentially I just feed right in. I just walk in. If I want food, I just go get food. They just charge my card. This is crazy. So my question was, if a non shows up in that, do they know that's a non? And
just the eyes.
Does a non have to pull out a phone?
No,
that's what I want.
You have to uncover your face because they literally, it's like a big iPad looking thing. Just for me, it is well below eye level. So I feel like an idiot because I got to walk up and look down at it. But it's got to get a good look at your face. It lets you in, and even it's less weird like when you go to the food stand and they hand you 2 beers and you walk away and don't pay anything. But when you walk into the gift shop and you just grab a jersey and a hat and you walk out, you feel like you're stealing.
Nice. Yes. I've always wanted to steal something, Josh. Maybe this is it. But you're not really stealing because they're going to
listen. I want you guys that are watching to know that we can kick you out of here. And Walter Arriaga is trying to be the first one to get booted out by pointing out a lot of technology, but no championships. It's not no haterade. Save the hate.
The best part is, Walter, I'm not even a Clippers fan. I'm going to support Josh in his lifelong rally for the Clippers. I'm there to support. They don't get a lot of support. Josh doesn't get a lot of support. I'm there.
When we were paying $2 to go watch Clipper games in the hellhole that was the Los Angeles Sports Arena, like the worst building in the history of the NBA, and there were like 8 people there. Never did we imagine that we'd have something as wonderful as the Intuit Dome.
There you go, Josh. We got somebody saying I seem authentic. These people. That's very kind.
He also follows up. He loves to make comments that he doesn't. I don't know what malding is. Malding must be a fancy word, but home prices we're doing it because home prices are coming down in California. Lots of data out there. You can pick the data you want anywhere, but come back when it actually shows what you believe it's showing.
Well, there you go. And you guys often comment on the beard. Just to understand, this is it. Tonight's the night. This is all she wrote.
I thought the kids were in charge.
They are, but I've booted them from being in charge because it is. I looked in the mirror the other day, Josh, and I felt like I looked like 70, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So the beard's gone. I'm 80% sure. Maybe
I thought it wasn't your call. I thought your wife was making the call.
Well, Josh, like everything, I took over.
You retain veto power. She makes the decision, but every now and again you have veto power.
Executive order. Robert C says, do you see the new listings in the Los Angeles area? They are exploding. Everyone wants to sell because of the wildfire. I don't follow listings in LA per se, because I don't really do a lot of business in LA. It's not my market. I would imagine, well, here's the thing. The fires are only impacting areas that are near, valleys and some of these areas that have a lot of brush, right? Which is a large part of LA. People don't realize that. They think of LA, they think downtown LA. They don't understand how many of these areas there are. So could people be selling? Sure, there could be. I mean, I can't back that or say that it's not accurate. But at the end of the day, the new listings data isn't showing it, right? So if you look at the new listings data, we're not seeing anything crazy at the moment with regards to spikes. We'll continue to follow it just to kind of keep things informed and moving forward. But
Altos probably has the best data. We just have to find an agent that has a subscription to those counties, because Altos breaks it down to the zips. We could look at the zips impacted by it.
Yeah, no, I have access to it too. So we'll get it. We'll get it.
Walter comes back and says he's just joking, but he's a Rockets fan, and then tries to make me feel better by saying I haven't won a title in years. Well, at least you have won titles, and at least you have draft picks, and at least you have a lot of recent draft picks. We have a bunch of old guys and no draft picks. I like our old guys, and we did a really good job retooling, but we can talk about Clippers later.
Yeah, and if want to make all of you feel better, I'm a Panthers fan in football, so just everyone is doing better than us, essentially. I mean, not really, but yeah, we're in the top. We're in the bottom 5, which isn't good. Heather goes on to say, yes, I do look old, and she's rooting for me to shave it. So that's all good.
I think it's less about the beard. It's more about the fact that Jeb does not do any personal care whatsoever. No lotion, no sunscreen, no nothing. He's just rolling through life as is.
Dude, don't be a sissy, bro.
See?
Don't be a sissy.
Jeb's like your grandpa that's like, don't be a pussy. We're going to the desert. We don't need sunscreen.
I don't think you could say that, Josh. I think you demonetized our channel.
I went old granddad on us. So you can say whatever he wants.
I think we just got demonetized. Let's see.
We still don't know who this is.
We don't, but it doesn't matter. So so let's just ask the question: how often fast can you refinance if you have a VA loan, Josh, or any loan? It doesn't matter, VA, non-VA.
Well, VA specifically asking this question, if you're going to do an IRRRL, you have to be 210 days from the first payment. So let's say you're closing right now, you don't have a payment in February, first payment is due March 1, 210 days after March 1 is when you're eligible. Have a borrower, really good example of how this can kind of hurt, bought last July that could have really benefited from doing an IRRRL in September when rates were much, much lower. But now we're doing it now. He's probably 0.75% higher than what he could have got because of that 210-day waiting period.
All right. Good stuff. Let's see. I saw a question, Josh, and I lost it. If you see something, throw it in there. Not a lot of questions, though, guys.
Mo says at least we have teams to root for. We lost the Chargers to LA. We could give them back. I mean, no one here really wanted them. I like them, but it's like
that's my LA team that I root for. Because the Panthers are so bad, I chose the Chargers.
And San Diego loved them, and San Diego is a great place. Why they felt the need to move, I don't know.
Money, man. Stadium. It's all about the money, baby.
Yeah.
Follows the money. Follow the money. That's what it's about, right?
Them being at SoFi was sort of like the Clippers being at Staples. It's not really their building.
Oh, well, there you go. Let's see here. Josh, what do we have?
I think we've gone through all the questions because we have officially, after like 250 episodes of the show, we've now answered all questions. And
we're still early, guys. We still have a good 10 minutes here. The reason we started early tonight is because Jeb I don't know why I said third person there.
You're going third person. I like it.
I have to leave a little bit early. My wife has a class that she's going to, and I've got 2 kids in sports, and then I got a kid that will have no parent at home if I don't get there. So, and he's only 6. So that
he will not burn the house down. Not in no way, shape, or form would he do that.
I would say that he would be the one, but that would be a lie. I think
Nash would be the one.
Nash would probably be the one to burn the house down. Yeah. So let's not even put that out there. That's not a good vibe. Let me go back through these questions. Josh, guys, put questions in here. We are here to answer them for you. We are here to help guide you, provide some value.
This is a version of a question that we answered earlier. Do you believe Victor R. looks like a first responder there, or a supporter of first responders? Either way, we appreciate it. Do you believe that housing will boom this spring? And if so, will rates drop? Before you answer, Jeb, I'm going to say it's kind of backwards there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
If rates dropped, I would expect housing to boom. If rates stay elevated, it's going to kind of peter along.
Well, let's talk about what drop means, right? So we're currently about 7%, give or take a small 1/8 or so. Either way, if rates were to go to 6.5%, that buyer demand picks up for sure. Do home prices boom at 6.5%? I don't think so. I think it looks a lot again like last year, but probably with a little more home sales, assuming they stayed at 6.5%, right? So the average for last year, just so you guys are keeping track, was about 6.73%, I believe. So 6.73. So if the average for 2025 was to be about 6.5%, more sales, more happening. If interest rates were to get sub 6 and stay there for any period of time, I don't know if boom is the right word, but I think that 3 to 5% home price appreciation probably is double in a lot of areas out there with that sort of rate. Because I think that one unlocks some inventory, people that have lower interest rates. Yeah, 6% isn't, or let's call it 5.875 isn't, is still high relative to some of these lower rates, but we've talked about it. There are people out there that want to buy another property. They either things have changed since they originally purchased that home during the pandemic or prior to the pandemic, or they bought the wrong home, or something has changed in their environment where they're like, I can't do this anymore for one reason or another. And I know I said I would never sell this, but I have to do it. It happened to me. I did it. And so I'm just a number. And there's a lot of people out there that are like me, and that could cause home prices to really go. You get into the low fives, you see a boom. Is that going to happen in 2025? Not likely. Anything's possible, but not likely. So I think in order to see a boom, you need interest rates probably sub 5 to really get things going again. But
and when you say not likely, it's not likely because the economy would have to cool a lot. You would have to see unemployment spike relatively quickly, and you would have to see the inflation numbers continuing to come down, which a spike in unemployment is heavily disinflationary, absent other issues going on there. So it could happen, but it just doesn't, from almost anyone's reasonable forecast of what we can foresee now, doesn't look like it's in the cards. Rates could go 1% lower. I don't think they're going 2% lower this year.
All right. And then Victor told us a little bit about, he is a former firefighter. So appreciate you doing that, Victor. We need you guys out there, especially over the last couple of weeks, and maybe even today. I think there's a fire in somewhere near the Grapevine. I saw a headline. Again, I tell people, don't read the headlines. I tell you all the time, don't read the headlines. I read the headline that there was a fire near the Grapevine. So I'm assuming that's accurate, but I don't know all the details.
Couple of good questions here, Jeb.
All right, let's do it.
John Rodriguez had said hi a couple times earlier and didn't follow through with his question. Now he's got it. Getting ready to retire, owes $180,000. Would you think I should refi for a new 30-year loan? This right here is personal preference. There's no right or wrong answer. If what I will say is there a finish line in sight? Do you have a plan, and do you have the budget to get it paid off at some point in retirement? Let's say, it's hard to tell from the picture here, but let's say you're going to retire, you're 65. New 30-year loan takes you to 95. That thing's not going away in your lifetime, unless at some point you do a reverse mortgage, or you're wanting to push forward into the future before you take IRA withdrawals. So let's say at 180,000, let's say you have it in an IRA, but when you take those withdrawals, it's taxable. You don't want to get hit. You don't want to not have tax deductions. Maybe you do, $12,000, $15,000 a year for 10 or 12 years and pay it off. It just involves having a strategy and knowing what that strategy is. And I do have retirees that have just said, I'm never going to pay it off. I just want to minimize the housing cost with a fixed rate, and we'll refi every time it makes sense to do so. But know that as you pay it down, 180,000, you're going to want to see close to a full percent savings and interest rate before you'd want to do it.
All right. W. Mason says, I know this is a general question, but if you plan on getting a 30-year fixed mortgage rate, but plan on paying it off in 10 to 12 years, I'm guessing it's probably not worth buying down the interest rate in case, unless you get a 15-year fixed mortgage. I think that's a fair statement. If you're going to pay it down quicker anyway, I don't know that you should spend the money up. Again, what's it going to cost you to buy it down, and all of these different things. So there's a lot that kind of goes into that. But if your plan is truly 10 to 12 years, Josh, what are your thoughts? Should you buy down the rate?
So the follow-up where he also said, unless you get a 15-year mortgage, if you are 100% committed to that 10 to 12-year time frame before paying points, and we just talked earlier in the show, a 15-year will get you 1 point, will get you a 0.5% lower in interest rate. So you're already starting lower to begin with, and it's going to move 0.5% lower with only 1 point. The only downside there is it locks you into that higher payment. So if you're very comfortable in your ability to make the payment, your reserves, if anything went sideways where you're not going to go, oh crap, now I got to do a 30-year refinance just to get something more affordable. I would, before I paid a bunch of points to buy that rate down, I would look more at the 15-year.
All right. I typically would not even address this because you've asked it like 15 times. But should I buy a home in Orlando? I have no idea whether you should buy a home in Orlando. I don't know Orlando. I don't live in Orlando. I don't follow Orlando. What I would say is find an agent in that market and have that conversation. You shouldn't be asking anyone whether you should buy a home. It should be based on where you are in your life. And if you're asking whether or not, you probably shouldn't be. It should be a personal decision that you've made because it's the right time in your life. You got money in the bank. You're looking, 7, 10 years out. You got that longer term time horizon. You're comfortable with the payment. That's when you should buy. Right. And if Orlando offers that for you, fantastic. I do know one thing about, Orlando is that they have seen more supply. So probably a little bit of a slower housing market. But that at the end of the day, that shouldn't be your basis for buying or not. So, you know, again, that's my advice.
Well, and again, that's what the referral link is down there below. If you're not even if you're ready to buy tomorrow, but if you're thinking you need an expert in the Orlando market, Jeb has a network of people nationwide. We can absolutely get you connected to someone. He can get you connected with someone that could answer that really, really well versus us knowing in general the data that we know nationwide and knowing the different sections there of Florida. And same thing on the mortgage side. Any of you have these questions on the mortgage, one of the things that is an unpleasant part of this is we get emails, we get phone calls from people that are 2 weeks into it with a knucklehead that if they had called us up front, it would have been faster, easier, smoother, stress-free process. So if you want to get connected to me on the mortgage side in the states we're in, experts that Jeb and I trust in states that we're not in, which is probably like 65% are going to come through us. But use that link, give us a chance. So it's not just a matter of here answering you guys' questions. We can go into details. And like I said, all the time, he and I are getting emails that we're shooting back. We're going to get you an answer one way or the other so that you're on the right path.
And Jose has a question. Is there help for first-time home buyers? And the answer is yes, Jose. This class next Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's January 28th. It's not going to be on YouTube. The link is jebsmith.net. /webinar or seminar webinar. We'll get you to the same place. And again, A to Z, buying a home, take about 60 to 75 minutes. It's a guide. Show up, register, and I think there's about 230 or so people registered so far. So you'll be with a lot of people out there learning about the process. So that's where I would recommend. But until then, guys, make sure you're buying right, borrowing smart, building wealth. Adios.
Amigos.